Holy shit. I don't even know where to start with this because my hands are still shaking, and I can barely wrap my head around what just happened. Like, I'm sitting here in my truck right now, parked in my driveway, and I've been staring at my steering wheel for the past 20 minutes trying to process everything. This is absolutely insane, and I need to tell someone before I lose my mind. Okay. So, context. I need to give you context because otherwise none of this is going to make any sense. And trust me, even with context, it barely makes sense. 6 years ago, I was with this girl named Maddie. We were high school sweethearts, the whole deal. Everyone in town thought we were going to get married, have kids, grow old together in Oak Haven. That's the kind of small town I live in, by the way. Oak Haven. Population like 3,000 on a good day. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone's business. Where one rumor can destroy your reputation faster than you can blink. Where your past follows you around like a shadow you can't shake. Maddie and I were together for 3 years. I loved her with everything I had. I was 22. Working construction, building decks and doing renovations around town, trying to save up money so we could get a place together. She was in community college, talking about transferring to a university 2 states away to finish her degree. I supported it, you know? I wanted her to chase her dreams, even though the thought of her leaving terrified me. And then she left. She got accepted to this school in another state, and she just went. Well, we tried the long-distance thing for maybe 4 months before she called me one night and told me she'd met someone else. Someone on her campus. Someone who was going places and had ambition. Those were her exact words, and they've been burned into my brain ever since. The whole town watched me fall apart, watched me become this shell of a person, just going through the motions, showing up to job sites, doing the work, going home alone. For months I was just empty. And the worst part? Maddie's family still lived here. Her mom, Lara, ran the local bakery. Her dad had passed away a few years before Maddie and I got together. So it was just Lara and Maddie, and I'd gotten really close to Lara during those 3 years. Lara was amazing. Warm, kind, that's always smiling, even when you could tell she was exhausted from running the bakery 14 hours a day. She treated me like I was already part of the family. Sunday dinners, holidays, helping her fix things around the bakery when stuff broke down. After Maddie left, I avoided Lara like the plague, because seeing her just reminded me of everything I'd lost. But this is a small town. You can't avoid people forever. Fast forward to about 3 months ago. I'm 28 now, still doing construction work, still single, because I haven't let myself get close to anyone since Maddie. I've built up a pretty good reputation as a contractor. I'm the guy people call when they need something fixed right. So when this wealthy businessman named Richard bought the old property behind Lara's bakery and wanted to turn it into some kind of event venue, he called me. The property was a disaster. The deck was rotting. The gazebo was literally falling apart. There was a pergola that looked like a strong wind would knock it over. Richard wanted it all fixed, reinforced, made safe for events. Said he'd pay well, and I needed the money because I'd been slowly renovating this old workshop I bought on the edge of town, trying to turn it into something. A workspace downstairs, a loft apartment upstairs, something that was mine. So I took the job, and that's how I ended up seeing Lara again, regularly, because her bakery was right next door to the property I was working on, and she'd come out sometimes, bring me water or coffee, check on the progress. Those first few weeks were awkward as hell. We'd make small talk about the weather, about the work, carefully avoiding any mention of Maddie. But slowly, gradually, we started actually talking. Really talking. I learned that Maddie barely called her anymore. Too busy with her new life, her new boyfriend, her new friends. Lara tried to hide how much it hurt, but I could see it. The way her smile would falter when she mentioned Maddie's name. The way she'd change the subject quickly, like it was easier to not think about it. And I started noticing other things too. Things I felt guilty for noticing. Like how Lara would tuck a strand of dark hair behind her ear when she was thinking. How she had this habit of biting her lower lip when she was worried about something. How she always wore these oversized sweaters that somehow made her look both comfortable and beautiful at the same time. How her laugh was this genuine, a full sound that made me smile even when I was having the worst day. I pushed those thoughts away. This was my ex's mom. This was completely inappropriate. This was a line I absolutely could not cross, not in a town like Oakhaven where rumors spread like wildfire, and one wrong move could destroy both our reputations. But then things started getting complicated. Richard, the guy who owned the property, he started coming around more. And the way he talked to Lara made my blood boil. He was this smooth, wealthy guy with expensive clothes and a smile that never reached his eyes. He owned the building her bakery was in. He was her landlord. And he'd use that as leverage. He'd make these comments about rent increases, about needing to reassess the lease terms, always with this implied threat hanging over her head. And Lara would just take it, would smile politely and nod, because what choice did she have? I started staying later on the job sites, working when I knew Richard might show up, just so Lara wouldn't have to deal with him alone. I told myself I was just being a good neighbor, a good contractor, looking out for a friend. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. 3 weeks ago, Lara turned 31, her birthday. And Richard threw this party at the venue, which wasn't even finished yet, by the way, but he insisted. Said it was good publicity, good for networking. The whole town was invited, and I technically shouldn't have been there because I was just the contractor, just the ex-boyfriend from 6 years ago who should have faded into the background by now. But Lara had specifically asked me to come. That she'd stopped by the workshop one afternoon while I was framing out the loft, and she'd looked so hopeful when she asked, so vulnerable, that I couldn't say no. So I showed up. Jeans, work boots, a clean shirt. That was as dressed up as I was going to get. The party was in full swing when I arrived. Balloons, decorations, too much cake, some terrible pop music blaring from speakers. Everyone was laughing, drinking, having a good time. And there was Lara, standing in the backyard, wearing this burgundy dress with a beige shawl draped over her shoulders. God, she looked beautiful. The kind of beautiful that made my chest ache. I kept my distance at first, grabbing a drink, making small talk with a few people I knew from around town. But I could feel her eyes on me across the yard, and every time I looked up, she was looking back. And then she walked over to me with this cheap paper party blower. You know, the kind that unfurls when you blow into it. She lifted it to her lips and blew, and this purple paper strip wobbled through the air and tapped against my chest. It was such a silly, innocent gesture, but the way she looked at me when she did it, there was nothing innocent about that look. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought everyone at the party could hear it. I had to clench my jaw to keep myself together, had to focus on breathing normally, because every muscle in my body was tense with how much I wanted to close the distance between us. "Happy birthday," I muttered, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. Her smile softened, became smaller, but braver, like she'd just made a decision and was committed to seeing it through. And then she said, so quietly I almost didn't hear her over the noise of the party, "I wish I'd met you first, Reed." Time stopped. I swear to God, everything just froze. The music, the laughter, the conversations around us, it all faded into static. All I could hear was my pulse thundering in my ears and those 6 words echoing in my head. I wish I'd met you first. Before I could think, before I could stop myself, I took a step closer to her. I angled my shoulder just right to block Richard's view from where he was standing by the patio door, because I could feel his eyes on us, and I didn't care. Not in that moment. Lara was close enough now that I could smell her shampoo beneath the sugary scent of birthday cake in the air. Close enough that I could see her chest rising and falling with nervous breaths. Close enough that I could see the hope and fear warring in her eyes. Timelines can change, I said, my voice low but steady. And I meant it. Every word. Her eyes widened slightly, lips parting like she wanted to say something, but before she could, Richard's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Reed," he said, smooth and cold. "Stop looming over the birthday girl." I turned to see him walking toward us, drink in hand, that smug smile plastered across his face. He was wearing expensive loafers and a button-down shirt that probably cost more than my truck payment, and everything about his body language screamed ownership. It like he owned the property, owned the venue, owned Lara. "I'm not looming," I said flatly. "Just checking structural integrity." "Of course you are." His voice dripped with sarcasm. "But I'll expect the site ready for inspection next week. Business is business. Don't make me regret being flexible." There it was. The threat. The reminder of who held the power. Who could make my life difficult if I stepped out of line. "It'll be ready," I said, before Lara could apologize for something that wasn't her fault. "Permits, inspection window, the whole thing." Richard looked me up and down, his eyes sweeping over the dust on my jeans, the worn work boots, the tool belt I'd forgotten I was still wearing. "Don't disappoint me, son." I wanted to snap back, wanted to tell him I wasn't his son, and he didn't own me. But I bit my tongue. Yet he was still my employer, at least until this job was done. Richard seemed satisfied with my silence and drifted away, already bored with asserting his dominance. Lara exhaled shakily beside me. "You didn't have to do that," she murmured. I shrugged, keeping my eyes on her. I'm not great at watching people get cornered. We talked for a few more minutes, the conversation lighter now, but still charged with everything we weren't saying. She blew the party blower at me again before I left, that same mischievous smile on her face, and I drove home feeling like my entire world had tilted on its axis. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, things have been different. Not bad different, just different. Lara started coming by the workshop more often, usually bringing coffee or pastries from the bakery. We'd talk while I worked, at conversations that ranged from silly to serious, from childhood stories to dreams we'd given up on. It felt easy, natural, like we'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. But we never talked about what she'd said at her birthday party, never addressed the elephant in the room. We were both too scared, I think, too aware of what it would mean if we actually acknowledged what was happening between us. And then the storm came. 3 days ago, the weather turned violent. Flash flood warnings, the river behind the venue swelling over its banks, wind and rain coming down so hard you could barely see 10 feet in front of you. I was loading lumber into my truck when my phone rang. Lara's name on the screen made my stomach drop. "Reed!" Her voice was tight with panic. "The old gazebo. The tarp you put up, it's ripping. The river's coming up the back lot. Richard said he won't send a crew until the rain stops, but that could be hours. Please, I need your help." I didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way." The drive to the property was terrifying. The roads were slick, The rain was coming down in sheets. Visibility was almost zero. But I didn't care. All I cared about was getting to Lara. When I pulled in, she was already out there in the storm, fighting with this massive blue tarp that was whipping around in the wind like it had a mind of its own. Her hair was plastered to her face, her clothes soaked through, her hands raw and red from gripping the tarp. "Lara, let go!" I shouted over the storm, running toward her. But she didn't let go. Of course she didn't. Lara had never been the type to give up on anything. I reached her just as the tarp tore free from her grip. I caught her around the waist, pulling her back before she could get dragged off her feet. For a split second, we were pressed together, her body against mine. Both of us soaked and shaking. Her hands clutched at my jacket, and she looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes. "Don't let me go," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. "Not happening," I promised. We worked together to secure the tarp, fighting against the wind and rain, moving like we'd done this 1,000 times before. Lara shouted directions, steady and focused despite the chaos. I climbed the ladder, tied the knots, reinforced the structure, while the gazebo groaned beneath me and the river hissed louder behind us. When we finally got it secured, we stumbled into the barn office, both of us drenched and shivering. The smell inside was familiar: old hay, sawdust, and the faint sweetness of sugar from her bakery. Lara immediately went into action mode, calling her staff, organizing sandbags, making sure everyone stayed safe and away from the river. I watched her work, watched her take charge, and felt something shift in my chest. This wasn't just attraction. This wasn't just chemistry. This was something deeper, something that had been building for months and was finally becoming impossible to ignore. When she finally stopped moving, when the immediate crisis was handled, she turned to look at me. Water was still dripping from her eyelashes. Her clothes were ruined, but she'd never looked more beautiful. "You came," she said quietly. "I told you I would," I replied, draping a dry towel around her shoulders. "Why are you always the one showing up?" she asked, and there was something vulnerable in her voice, something raw. "Because you're usually the one showing up for everybody else," I said simply. Her throat worked as she swallowed, and I watched her eyes get shiny with unshed tears. She looked away first, like she needed a moment to compose herself. The storm raged all night, but by morning it had passed. I stayed, kept working, because that's what I do. And when Lara came to find me the next day, thanking me again, standing in the barn looking tired but determined, I felt that pull between us stronger than ever. The weeks after that were a blur of finish work on the venue. Long conversations, stolen glances. Lara started helping me with the loft, insisting on staining the oak shelves herself, even though she got sawdust all over her clothes. I'd catch her laughing at herself, completely unself-conscious, and I'd feel my heart do this stupid flip in my chest. We finished the loft on a Wednesday afternoon. The walls were painted soft cream, the wood gleaming, the windows letting in floods of natural light. It didn't look like much yet, but it was ours. We'd built it together. Lara stood next to me at the bottom of the stairs, looking up at what we'd created. "We did it," she said softly. "Yeah," I managed, my throat tight. "We did." She stepped closer, her hand brushing mine. It was such a small gesture, but it felt monumental. I looked down at her, at this woman who had somehow become the center of my entire world, and I couldn't hold back anymore. I took her hand in mine. "You know, when I started this, I thought it was just a place to work, a place to escape. But now," I paused, squeezing her hand gently. "Now I think it's more than that. It's a place where I can build something I'm proud of. And I'm proud of this. Of us. Her smile widened, and she stepped closer until there was barely any space between us. I'm proud of us too, Reed. Lara, The words stuck in my throat, but she didn't need me to say them perfectly. She just needed me to say them. I'm here, she whispered, looking up at me with those incredible eyes. And I'm not going anywhere. That was all the permission I needed. I leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't rushed or desperate, but it was slow, certain, like something that had been waiting for the right moment to finally happen. Her lips were soft against mine, her hand coming up to rest against my chest, where she could probably feel my heart hammering. When we broke apart, her forehead rested against mine, and I could feel her breath matching my own rhythm. We're building something together, aren't we? She asked softly. Yeah, I replied, my voice rough with emotion. We are. And that's when it hit me, really hit me, what we'd just done, what this meant. I'd just kissed my ex-girlfriend's mother. In my workshop. After months of dancing around this thing between us, after weeks of telling myself it was wrong, that it could never happen, that the town would tear us apart for it. But standing there with Lara in my arms, her smile soft and her eyes bright, and I realized I didn't care. Let the town talk. Let Richard threaten. Let Maddie find out and lose her mind. None of it mattered, because this, Lara and me, what we'd built together, what we were building, this was real. This was worth fighting for. Reed, Lara said, pulling back slightly to look at me. Are you okay? You got really quiet. I laughed, running a hand through my hair. Yeah, I'm processing. This is huge, Lara. You know that, right? This is going to change everything. I know, she said, and there was no fear in her voice, just certainty. I've known for a while now, and I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this. I'm tired of caring what everyone else thinks. What about Maddie? I had to ask, even though the name felt wrong in this moment. Lara's expression hardened slightly. Maddie left. She left both of us. She gets to be happy with her new life, and I get to be happy too. And Reed, she cupped my face in her hands. You make me happy. Happier than I've been in years. My chest felt like it might explode. You make me happy too. So damn happy. We kissed again, longer this time, and I felt like I was finally breathing after holding my breath for 6 years. When we broke apart, Lara was smiling that real, genuine smile that I'd fallen in love with without even realizing it. So what now? She asked. Now, I said, wrapping my arms around her waist. We keep building. We finish this loft. We figure out our lives. We deal with whatever comes our way. Together. Together, she echoed, and the word sounded like a promise. We stayed in the workshop until the sun started setting, just talking, planning, dreaming about what came next. But Lara told me she'd been thinking about expanding the bakery, maybe offering catering services for events. I told her about my plans for the workshop, how I wanted to take on bigger renovation projects, maybe hire a small crew. We could work together, she said at one point, her eyes lighting up. Your renovations, my catering. We could be a team. We already are a team, I pointed out, and she laughed. As the sky turned orange and pink outside the windows, Lara's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and sighed. I need to get back to the bakery. I've got an early morning tomorrow. I'll walk you to your truck, I said, not ready to let her go yet. Outside, the air was cool and clear, the storm from days ago just a memory. We stood by her truck, neither of us wanting to say goodbye. "Thank you," Lara said suddenly. "For everything. But for showing up in the storm, for helping me finish the loft, for being brave enough to take a chance on this. On us." "You were brave first," I reminded her. "At your birthday party, I wish I'd met you first. Remember?" She blushed, actually blushed, and it was adorable. I can't believe I said that. I thought about it for weeks before I got the courage. "I'm glad you did," I said, pulling her close for one more kiss. "I'm glad you were brave enough for both of us." She left a few minutes later, and I stood in my driveway watching her taillights disappear down the road. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A text from Lara. "Already missing you. Is that weird?" I smiled, typing back. "Not weird. I miss you too." This is wild. This whole thing is absolutely insane. I kissed my ex's mom. I'm falling in love with my ex's mom. And instead of feeling guilty or wrong, I feel more right than I have in years. I know there's going to be fallout. I know Richard is going to be a problem. He's had his eye on Lara for months, trying to use his position as her landlord to manipulate her into something. I'm not even sure what his endgame is, but I know it's not good. I know the town is going to have opinions, is going to whisper and speculate and judge. I know Maddie is eventually going to find out, and that conversation is going to be nuclear. But right now, sitting here in my truck, replaying the feeling of Lara's lips on mine, the way she looked at me like I was her whole world, I don't care about any of that. We'll deal with it when it comes. We'll face it together. Because that's what we do now. We face things together. Holy shit. I kissed Lara, and she kissed me back. And we're doing this. We're really doing this. I need to call someone. I need to tell someone before I burst. But who? My best friend would think I've lost my mind. My sister would have a million questions. My mom would probably have a heart attack. Actually, you know what? I don't need to tell anyone yet. This is ours for now. Mine and Lara's. Our secret. Our story. Our beginning. And it's perfect. I finally get out of my truck and head inside, grinning like an idiot. Tomorrow, I'm going to wake up and finish the detail work on the loft. Lara said she might stop by in the afternoon with lunch. We're going to keep building, keep creating, keep moving forward. Together. Yeah, this is wild. This is absolutely insane. And I wouldn't change a single thing.